Hi everyone. So it's Daisy here from Rare Youth Revolution, and we've had a bit of technical difficulties, which is ironic. And Nazi and Georgia are struggling to get in. So we've got the lovely Jeff working on that now. But for the time being, it's going to be myself, Katie Baker, Katrina Brooks, and Katie Callahan having a chat. So we're here to discuss the topics that matter most to us as young people living with rare diseases and having grown up with rare disease or conditions. So I'll just introduce myself first. Some of you might know me from the Rare Youth Revolution, but my name's Daisy. I'm the youth editor, and I have a rare disease, cholesteatoma, which has affected my ears. And because of that, I really want to help other people in advocating for their own rare diseases and helping share their stories, which is what the Rare Youth Revolution is all about. So I'm just going to go around and introduce our panelists for today. So we've got Rare Youth team member Katie Baker, and she lives with the rare disease scimitar syndrome. Since starting her advocacy journey, Katie's gone on to create the awesome My Rare Disease podcast, which I was very lucky to feature on. A clothing line as well, doesn't stop there, short films, and has been speaking at rare disease events to raise awareness. So Katie's is sharing her perspectives on the world as someone with a rare disease and helping to share the voices of others. So hey Katie, thanks for being here.
Thank you. That's a nice introduction.
Oh, good. I'm glad you like it. So then we've got Katrina. So Katrina Brooks was diagnosed with systematic lupus. I'm going to try and pronounce the last bit, but correct me if I'm wrong. So erythematosus.
I can't even pronounce it, so sure.
Okay, thanks. So when she was 9 years old, and since her diagnosis, she has been on a mission to raise awareness of invisible illness and highlight the challenges that children and young people face. She proactively takes part in patient participation and research projects and advocates through her own blog site, Katie's Territory, and as a Rare Youth team member. So it's lovely to have you as well, Katrina. Thanks for joining us. And then we've got Katie Callahan, who also lives with a rare condition, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and chronic intestinal pseudo-obstruction. Was that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Katie is passionate about advocacy and helping others through the Rare Youth Revolution. She also runs her own organisation, Cards for Bravery, which distributes positive handmade cards to hospitalised and seriously ill children across the UK. This is something Katie came up with when she was only 13 years old during a lengthy hospital stay. So that's really incredible and lovely to have you here, Katie, as well.
Yes, it's lovely to be here. Thank you.
That's cool. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and start off with our first topic, which is something that I think has affected probably most people throughout their lives, whether they've got a rare disease or not. So mental health and the challenges that accompany that. So I think as a young person living with rare disease, your mental health can be affected more than maybe if you didn't have one. And it kind of comes hand in hand, I think. And it's something that isn't really spoken about when you're having hospital appointments and doctor's appointments and seeing people for your disease. I think it's kind of put on the back burner a bit, and it's really good that we can talk about it in situations like this and talk about it with each other. Katie, I know that you're a real advocate for mental health. So my first question for us to go through is, has having a rare disease directly impacted your mental health? And how did that happen, and kind of when did it start, if it did?
Yeah, so I was in my third year of uni, so 2018, and nothing had like drastically happened rare disease wise, but I don't think anything drastic does have to happen for you to, feel the toll of rare disease mentally or emotionally.
Yeah.
I do have a diagnosis of mental health condition now, and I think it was affected so much because a disease can affect so many different elements of your life. It's not just physical. I mean, at uni, obviously, it's like friendships, relationships, living independently, all those things. So yeah, starting my third year of uni, but I think when I look back at things now, when I was like younger at primary school, I think, oh, that situation happened because I was really anxious, for example. But obviously, when you're so much younger, you don't really put a label on it, do you? You just kind of think it's part of life.
That's true. It's harder to work it out when you're younger, but I think definitely in your teens it probably starts coming out a bit more and manifesting as like anxiety or something. You can really put a label on it then, which is good for understanding it, I guess, in a way. So yeah, how have you felt like supported with your mental health so far, and as like having your rare disease and mental health existing alongside each other, have you felt like they've both been kind of managed or supported along the road, or how's that been for you?
Well, for me, I knew the trigger 100% of me struggling was due to my rare disease, so I suppose that's the first step for trying to figure out like how your rare disease does affect you mentally. But I'm just trying to read my notes so I don't forget what I was trying to say.
Me too.
But yeah, I do feel supported now. Like I've got the knowledge of knowing how much rare disease can affect your mental health, and I know it sounds really cheesy, but like at the time, I didn't even think that anyone else felt like anxious or low due to their rare disease. I kind of thought, oh, everyone clearly just handles it a lot better than I do, because
on with it. Yeah.
I get that. I've heard absolutely no one else talk about this, but actually through like other people I've met, either they say, yeah, I 100% struggle sometimes too, or thank God you've said that, because I also felt like the only person. So I suppose like through research I've done or people I've met, I do feel supported now, but I still think there's like a massive gap, whether that's in hospital or at school. Say like teachers not really know the correlation between the two. I still think there's a massive gap in knowledge in handling a young person's mental health alongside their rare disease.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think especially because mine kind of affected me again later, and I think when I was at school, the rare disease, I didn't know I had it, so it wasn't a thing then. But then when I was like diagnosed just before I went to uni, and it all happened when I was doing my A levels, so end of secondary school, and I think the lack of because one is like, oh, I've got this diagnosis and this condition, that's like scary enough, and then you don't really know how you're going to feel about it because it's just kind of happened. You don't have like any time to process it because it's happening, and it's just kind of all happening at once. So I think, it's important maybe for there to be something in place when diagnosis is happening. For instance, I think I mentioned it before, but having something at the hospital that people can direct you to for your mental health. So earlier today I was at a hospital appointment and I was just looking around the waiting room, and there was nothing about kind of how deafness or sudden deafness or going, hearing loss would affect your mental health. There's nothing at all on the walls anyway. There might be some stuff like if you ask someone, but there's lots of stuff for lip reading groups and sign language teaching and stuff like that, but there was nothing directly that said, this could make you feel sad, basically. So here's a number to call, or here's a support group to join, here's people that are dealing with the same thing as a young person. There was nothing there. So I think it is a real big gap, and it would be really, really cool if that could be filled somehow, or maybe just even if people could ask a receptionist at a hospital and they could direct you to someone. It doesn't have to be spelled out, but wow, hello Georgia. Hi. Sorry Katie, I'll come back to that, but I just want to introduce Georgia, so everyone knows Georgia's here. So would you like to introduce yourself, Georgia, quickly? Are you, yeah.
Yeah. Hi, I'm sorry, my computer wasn't working.
That's okay.
I'm Georgia. I've got Friedreich's ataxia. I was diagnosed when I was 15. I'm 24 now. I also have tonsillitis, so that's why I'm talking a bit strange.
That's okay. You're not at all really clear, better than me. Thanks so much, and I'm really glad you're here. Any news on Nazi? Don't suppose you know from the other side if she's gonna. It's okay. We'll keep an eye out. We'll keep an eye out. Hopefully she can join us a bit later. But yeah, so I'm just catching up with Katie about mental health at the moment. So yeah, we were just talking about the lack of kind of resources and things at diagnosis immediately. And I think it's also a scary time if you're diagnosed before something big happens, like you mentioned uni, and that being kind of at the same time as that, I can relate a lot, because I think, again, it's kind of what you said about not linking the two together and not realizing that when you're younger that it's your mental health is affected by it. But I think I kind of had that at an older age as well, because just before everyone was going to uni and I sort of was like not, and I thought I want to take like a couple years, I don't want to go yet. And I've always been really bad at like staying away from home. When I was younger, I got really homesick, and then I think after the operations and the hearing stuff happened, it kind of made it really, really bad, and I just wanted to like stay at home and like be safe and close to people that I knew and friends. So I think having support before those big milestones as well, like uni, and having things put in place when you're there. Like, I don't know if you had anything or have anything now that kind of helps you through with uni, with your disease, like if there's, do you have anything?
At the moment, well, because of COVID, we study from home, so I suppose it's a lot different
That's
again.
true.
But
Yeah.
by going back to what you just said, I think there are two things there. Like, number one, uni obviously is a massive thing, and for a lot of people, the first time that you may be living away from home, and so like quite rightly, you don't put your rare disease and that together because you've never been through it. But then on that, with many rare diseases, especially like the ones that we haven't talked about, like there's not much information on them anyway, so how are you meant to understand what's going on when like there's so little information? Like, trying to understand it yourself is hard enough, let alone putting yourself in like quite challenging situations, really. That like it adds layers, and that just no wonder why so many people struggle, because it's just such a massive steps.
It is. They are big steps, and I think I've told the story before of having to like get the lecturer to use a microphone and stuff like that, and just finding it really awkward and the process really awkward. And I'm really glad I did do it, because people turned around and said, oh, I couldn't hear her anyway and stuff like that. So it's good to definitely just do what you feel you need, I think, is the most important thing. And even if it's difficult at the time, to ask for what you need, just got to do it, because people will understand, and you might help other people out at the same time without knowing it. So yeah, so I think that leads us on to the next question of so what are your techniques for kind of dealing with mental health issues, and do you have any advice for others who are in a similar situation?
Well, for me now, on medication, I have counselling sessions, and I really think counselling sessions, like, for me, they're really good, because I think it's part of the advice I'd give. Talking to someone outside of your immediate family or friend circle can be so beneficial for you, both to get different perspectives, but also, I mean, I know other people find it difficult to talk about their disease with family and friends, because again, that's just a big challenge within itself. So I'd give that advice, but also make sure there's a hobby, or like a self-care hobby or whatever that you enjoy, because again, it doesn't just distract you, but it can like makes you remember that, oh, my life isn't just illness, like there's something else.
That's true.
that I can that you can focus on. But also, the advice I would give is your mental health doesn't have to affect you if it's just like a bad pain day or like a bad health day. Like your mental health can be affected any time due to a rare disease. Like it can pop up at any time, so don't feel embarrassed to feel that way, even if like you feel okay, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I think it's really important as well to, as you mentioned, like having bad days. And I think some days it's important to just accept that you feel like a bit rough. Not I'm like physically rough, but I mean mentally you feel like, oh, today, like I just can't, I don't want today. Like it's okay to just feel like that. And I think it's difficult to strike a balance because obviously advocating for your rare disease and yourself and mental health, it's a very positive thing and it's a very good way to spin it. But I think there's also value in accepting when you don't feel positive and just letting yourself have the bad days as well and not beating yourself up about it if you do feel like earlier I felt a bit like, oh, I don't want to have it's not like the end of the world, but I don't want to have another hearing test again, like for the millionth time. It's not a big deal, but in my head I just felt a bit like, this is boring, isn't it? So and I think sometimes instead of thinking, oh, I shouldn't be thinking this, I think it's just good to accept as well and kind of give yourself that time to feel a bit meh. But also I think therapy is definitely a really good suggestion. I grew up with my dad being a therapist, so that was like kind of our whole thing was about talking, and everyone, you know, talking is the best medicine. Doesn't matter like who you're talking to, but just if you can talk, it's great. And I think that's why like the youth revolution is great because we do a lot of talking, don't we, between ourselves and with other people. So yeah. And then we've kind of touched on it with the hospital mentioning about there being a lack of resources, but what would you like to be put in place for young people experiencing mental health problems? Like if you could had like a magic wand and could
Okay, so I wrote down two main things. So number one being care being taken as a holistic approach. So from the very beginning of diagnosis for both the patients and the families, because as we just said, it can impact family just as much as the patient. And also, even if you're diagnosed young, as like you've kind of touched on, Daisy, about feeling homesick, like traumatic experiences in hospital, they could affect you in later life. So a support from the very beginnings really important, but then also medical professionals acknowledging the mental health effect is crucial because, as we said, they're so interlinked. But then maybe even having like a multidisciplinary approach sometimes. So I go to physio now, and I'm 23, and my physio is the first medical professional ever to ask me about my mental health towards my rare disease.
Wow,
and like
really?
I never, well, it was so unexpected. I mean, unexpected in a good way. But now I think back on it, so I mean, collectively, we've seen many doctors and professionals, and probably not many at all have acknowledged your mental health as much as your physical health. So I really think sometimes having different professionals talking about you is so important to look at the different areas of your life to talk about your care.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think it's kind of, I don't know about you, but in appointments and stuff, it always seems a bit rushed, and it does seem a bit like you have to have memorized before you go in exactly what you need to tell them this time, like with symptoms or how you're feeling. And instead it would, as you said, would be really nice if one day maybe someone just said like, not like how are you physically, but how are you doing with it mentally, because then you'd have someone else to talk to and someone else that knew a lot about your condition. So yeah, I think that's definitely a great thing that people could put in place for mental health and young people with rare disease. So is there anything else you wanted to add on that topic for now, or?
The only thing else I was going to mention was like the like acceptance around it. So I kind of touched on it, like obviously your mental health can affect you any time, but recently talking about like the cycle of grief, and how the end of that is acceptance, and that's can seem quite daunting to people with rare disease because acceptance could automatically mean, oh, I've got to move on. But actually, then every time you receive a bit of news, for example, Daisy, you go for like your hearing test today. Say you got some new, you'd have to like you have to reprocess every piece of thing and like keep accepting, and like thinking about that on your mental health, that's massive. So I even think like emotions like that's just so important to like acknowledge. And as you said, Daisy, if you're having a bad mental health day, that's okay.
Yeah, that's great. No, I like that. I haven't really thought about it as a kind of grieving process. I think that's really a clever way to think about it. Like each bit of especially bad news that you get can knock you back, and you have to then re go through it again. So I think that's a really important thing to remember as well, that it is a lot to deal with. So yeah, to keep telling yourself that you're doing your best. And thank you so much. That was really insightful and really good topic to touch on. So because we've had a bit of a mix up with our like timings, because we were hoping to have Nazi here, I'm gonna just let Georgia take over for now and talk to Katie about their chosen topic, and then after that me and Katrina will have a chat about education, and then we'll go from there. So Georgia, you can take it away.
So I'm going to introduce Katie. This is Kate Callahan, who is going to be talking about the topic of transition in rare diseases. Katie has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome with chronic intestinal pseudo-obstruction. I hope I said that right. Yeah. She runs an organisation called Cards for Bravery, making a positive and uplifting handmade cards for hospitalised and seriously ill children. And I just want to say I'm in awe of all the youth members.
Thank you.
Who just seem so passionate about making a change for people in a similar situation.
Thank you.
So the first question is, how has transition played a part in your rare disease journey?
Yeah, definitely. So I think transition's one of those things that's just like a universal experience. Like whether you have a rare disease or not, everyone's going to experience transition within life, whether that's like relationships, or like education, hospital transition, independence to adult life. Like they're all parts of transition of some sort. And I think transition in life is like difficult for anyone, but when you have a rare disease or like a medical condition, this is even harder and like even scarier. And I think as a young adult, I'm at the time when it's like, when you're like between that age group, I think like 16, 25, you have like so many transitions happening. Like there's hospital and education and like relationships and building independence and whatever else, which a lot of people might even look at as like milestones, so to say. And I think transition plays like a big part in my rare disease journey, because so many transitions happen within life, and whether these go well or not, like really emphasizes how you feel about your future and like other transitions that's coming up, if that makes sense. Yeah, definitely. But
what are the differences in being treated as a younger person and the young adult that you are today?
So I think like one of the main differences I thought of is like A, independence, and two, professionals like speaking and relying to you rather than like your parents and caregivers, which I personally think can be like really difficult, like growing up and like relying more on your parents and caregivers, and then having to like transition from that to like more independence and being more involved with like professionals talking to you. And as you grow up, it's sort of just expected that we will take more control of our care and have a larger say with professionals and like a larger voice in general. Like when you're younger in hospital, like doctors are more likely to talk to your parents rather than you. When they're older, they're like keener to hear from you and not your parents or caregivers. And I think that can be difficult for a lot of patients, especially as like, even if they're older, like parents and like caregivers, like play such an essential role still, like in our rare disease journey. It's not like they're just like gone and aren't really involved anymore. And I think, like I said, I think it's like expected that you're going to become more independent and more like knowledgeable of your healthcare and like treatment plans and planning appointments yourself. And I think it can be like a lot to suddenly like take on as you're growing up. And I think still having like parents and caregivers involved is really important as well, like no matter your age, really.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I found it really difficult to learn how to speak to medical professionals.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so what could be put in place to make transitions smoother?
I feel like there was like a few things that I thought of this, but I think it's just so important to say that transition like should be smooth, like whether that's in like education or hospital or just like whatever. I think especially like in hospital, it's so important to start it early. Like if you are someone who's been diagnosed younger, obviously some patients aren't, but if you are diagnosed younger and you are sort of under hospitals and doctors at that age, I think like bringing it up as young as like 13, because like I feel like if we don't, you're just sort of expected, like everyone knows, like one day we're going to go to adults, but I think just having that conversation, like, oh, this will happen one day, and like it's okay, don't be too scared, we'll like build it in like slowly, rather than like suddenly like turning 16, 18 and being like, oh, here's this new environment, here you go, like and I think like along with that, just making sure it's really like patient-centered. I think just having successful communication between like pediatrics and adults team and like patient and family, and really successful communication with like whoever, whether that's in like education as well, like between teachers and like key like teachers and professionals and the students and family. And I think like personally my hospital transition basically failed because of communication. Like that was the main thing, because no one communicated and they were like arguing about what should happen and should I be in adults, should I be in peds, and it was a nightmare. And I think communication, a lot of doctors aren't brilliant at it. I think it's safe to say sometimes, but I think that's really important. And then also just things like meeting, like in hospital, meeting the new teams and like seeing the wards before you're actually transitioning, as well as like, I think going back to what Katie was saying, just mental health support for transition. Because I think when you're growing up and like you're going in like being more independent and going to like adult wards and this, that, the other, it can be like so isolating and scary. Like, I don't know about you, but like I feel like adult wards, like even like at 19, I've been in adults for 3 years, and even like still like adult wards, I'm just like, no, they're horrible, I don't like them. Type thing. I think it's just really vital to support patients without this experience, because I think so many people can struggle with like the new environment and gaining independence and all of that type of thing. And then I also think like resources for young people, I think especially in hospital, like even if you are on an adult ward, it's still so important to have education and activities and play specialists, especially, oh, not ETA, yay, sorry, but especially like, you know, it was still young adults, and I think especially as like visiting times are so limited, and we're also expected to suddenly be without like our parents on wards and in hospitals and stuff. And I think going back to that, I think this, despite being young adult, like we still need our parents, like still talk and acknowledge like our parents, like they've been there from the beginning. Like if we want them to be there, then like let them be there.
Yeah, that's so true. What advice would you give to someone transitioning from childhood to adulthood within the healthcare settings?
Yeah, so I think I have like 3 main points for this. I think A was like, don't be scared to speak up. We know ourselves best, and I think it's okay to speak up about how you're feeling about things and how they're going, whether they're like well or not. And I think that can be scary, like I said, especially as professionals want to hear more from you. But I think don't be scared to speak up, like tell them how you are feeling about things and whether you think it's going right or wrong from like your perspective. And then also following that, I think remembering that it is okay to feel scared or worried, like it is a big change, and don't be scared to tell someone how you're feeling or if you're not coping, like it's okay to take things at your pace. And then also, third of all, there's like nothing wrong with you and your parents like fighting for your rights and a smooth transition. Like, I think everyone has a right to that. And if it's not going well, there's nothing wrong with being like, look, this isn't going well. I think X, Y, Z should happen, or it hasn't gone well. I think those were the main three things that I thought of.
Well,
Sorry, say that again.
anything else?
I don't think so. I think those are like the main point.
That's
Okay.
great. That was really cool. Thank you, Katie. I just have to like pick up on something that you were talking about that reminded me of something we did was so there's this new word that's come out. I don't know if you've seen this campaign called the Rare Dictionary, created by Ibsen. Yeah, so there's a Rare Rev helped with a word, shush mummologist. So so this was kind of an experience that I had when I was younger. My mum was in an appointment. My mum was trying to explain something that I couldn't explain because I always found it really difficult. I still find it hard now, and I wish that she had come with me now, but COVID and stuff, I mean, you know, and anyway, she probably shouldn't, but she was trying to explain something to my doctor, and we weren't even like, we'd only seen him a couple times, and he told her to shush, like outright, like shush mum. And
I've had the same. I've had the doctor look at my mum and be like, no, like quiet down, let her talk. I'm like, it's not that she's not letting me talk, we're just looking off each other, know what's going on.
Exactly. Maybe like I think people need to remember that if we wanted to talk, we would. Like, our parents aren't being like, you know, holding us, being like hostage, being like, you don't talk. Like, we would talk. It's just sometimes it is easier for them because they're not living it. Like, they're living it. Obviously, it's their child. It's still very emotional, but they aren't, you know, living it as you. So it's a big difference for someone to explain something for you. And sometimes it is a lot easier. So I think, there's a lot of merit in remembering that parents don't need to shush.
Yeah,
I don't
definitely.
think.
And I also think like, I just think
go
also like what's going on, like when I know so many people who have had, I know a girl who does a lot of work in transition, she finds that so many patients, when they've had like a negative transition or just their like first admission on our adult ward in general, she's like, they always come out and they're like, that is so traumatic, I do not want to go in adult ward again, which is what I'm like since my like first admission in adults, I can stay a lot more at home because adults deal with it a lot more, but I'm very much like, I don't want to go on an adult ward. Like, I would do anything to stay out of adult A&E and be on adult ward because I found like the first day so traumatic as like a 16-year-old being like thrown on a bay when I'm used to cubicles and like people like 3 times my age. It sounds awful, but it was I feel like it can be such a traumatic experience sometimes as well. It's so important not to make it that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really a really good point. I think that's a great thing to remember, and for maybe any healthcare professionals watching to take that on board if you can. Great. So we got Nazi. Yay! Hey Nazi, thanks so much for getting in. I was going to just let Georgia introduce you, if that's okay, Georgia, as we'd planned.
So this is Nazi Forrest, or Nazi the Baker on Instagram. She's a 17-year-old pastry chef. She's a student and an activist. She is also the founder of Nazi the Baker Foundation, which bakes sickle cell friendly treats to raise awareness for sickle cell disease and other chronic illnesses. All of this while educating children and families around the positive impact of healthy diet and living routine. Nazi had sickle cell disease herself and is going to be discussing the topic of genetics with us, a topic that I think is neglected and something I don't know much about, even though my own condition is genetic. I've only heard Natty speak a few times, but I can already say there's nobody as positive and uplifting to teach us about this. So that's the question now.
I think I'll just go to Katrina and then we'll come back to Nazi if that's okay. But thanks, that was a lovely introduction. I love your bow as well. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to speak to Katrina now about the topic of education and raising awareness. How are you doing, Katrina? You okay? So the first question I had was, do you feel there is enough education in schools around rare disease, and did your friends understand what you were going through at primary school, secondary school, and kind of how did you find all of that experience as a whole?
Well, for me, my disease is lupus, and I think it's more commonly known about 9. I don't think anyone really, definitely my family weren't that aware, so people in the school weren't that aware, and I don't know, I just feel as though there wasn't really any educational awareness for invisible illnesses, rare illnesses, common illnesses even, and I feel like the teachers weren't very not very understanding, they weren't very aware, so they weren't able to educate my friends or the other people in different classes. And I really struggled with my friends kind of seeing me as being fine one day, and then a week from now, a month from now, I was so sick, I looked different because I was on medication that I gained some weight, and so I didn't look the same as I looked before. And it was trying to help them understand because I had no support from schools. So I feel like there's definitely a need for more awareness in schools.
Yeah, I think I can't speak personally, but I think I can understand how difficult that would be, especially alongside all the kind of standard issues you have going through like primary school and secondary school and all of the kind of more like normal problems we get. So I think having to deal with that alongside being worried about, what people are thinking about my illness, that must be really hard. So I think it's definitely key that there is more done at a primary school level. I'm not sure like how, but I think that would then build a foundation for the next steps. So your friends, if they were taught about your rare disease at school or rare diseases in general, then they might come and ask you and be like, how are you feeling? And you'd feel more comfortable knowing that they have a little bit of understanding about it. Because I mean, no one really wants to, especially as like such a young person. Like I didn't know I had it, but I can't imagine sort of as a really young person having something and sort of being able to go up to someone and say, like, I need this is how I'm feeling. I think that would be really difficult. So I think there is an area that we need to kind of rely on the teachers a bit to get the word out and to help have it as a topic or something, so that it's more widely understood. And I think so that kind of brings us on to the next topic about teachers. So you've kind of said that you didn't feel totally supported because not like it wasn't their fault, but they didn't understand. So did they understand like your need for time off and accommodate your needs at all, or was it kind of how was that?
Well, I think my school experience was pretty traumatic because it was a lot of kind of fighting to be heard, and my teachers, although I was visibly ill, they could that I sometimes wouldn't look ill, but I would still be ill. And them seeing and understanding that when I was away and I was sick, I was in hospital, I wasn't capable of doing the work. And I think them understanding that the deadlines they set were too much. I couldn't do that and be sick at the same time because practically impossible. And I think I got blamed a lot for not being there and not being at the same level as everyone else, even though they'll be like, oh, I sent you the work, you should have done it, or you should have at least known what we were doing. And I think I had a few teachers that were understanding and knew that I couldn't do the work, and so they would, when I was in school, they would offer more support. But I feel like teachers struggle to make time for any person who's slightly different, because you have to manage a class of so many, and it's hard to carve out enough time to specifically help that one child, which I understand, but I feel like there could be maybe a teaching assistant or a key person in the school who could offer that support. Because in secondary school, there was a bit more of an effort, because at that point I kind of understood what I needed from school, but it was still very much me fighting to be heard and have the support offered. And when it was offered, it was a bit more like, well, I'm in this class, and so this class understands, but in the next class, because obviously in secondary school the class has changed, that class didn't understand, so that was very difficult. So I think teachers, as well as the kids, just need to be educated on what needs to happen, and even the school needs to understand that there needs to be a different curriculum put in place for other kids who have illnesses.
Yeah, those are amazing points. I think definitely having a general like base knowledge of what it's like being someone with a disease or an illness, so that they can offer that, more, even if it's just a bit more general support, like as you said, at different deadlines, or just so they can try and let you be your best and meet your needs a bit more. I think that's really important. And I feel like by teachers understanding, you would then in turn probably feel a bit more confident in yourself and like your peers, like you'd feel understood basically, so it would be a bit of a smoother transition. And I think it's attendance in general is like quite a big topic that we've touched on before in the youth team, and people really struggle with it because there is such a sort of taboo around having time off at school for illness. And I think a lot of people have felt like it's so unfair, the merit that is given to attendance. Like it is like, if you attend 100% attendance, like gold star. If you drop below 50 or whatever, like detention or exclusion, or there's such big sort of penalties and prizes that it's just not very fair. When obviously if it's something like, if you're being naughty and you're not going to school, fair enough, but if it's something out of your control, there needs to be a different kind of system in place, I think, to deal with attendance. Kind of like, I guess, what flexible working is. Now it's acceptable for people to speak up about their needs, and we have flexible hours, and you do what you can when you can. I think that needs to be kind of translated into education somehow, doesn't it? Yeah. So if you had a magic wand, again, we love magic wands, and could get rare disease education into school curriculums, how do you think this would help young people growing up with rare or diagnosis?
Well, when I was in primary school, I think towards the end of primary school, so when I was about 11, someone from the Lupus UK charity came into my school and had like a little talk and gave out some leaflets, which, I mean, it was a bit too late at that point. It'd been many years of not understanding. But I think that was a great initiative into helping other people find out about rare illnesses and just illnesses in general. So I think maybe having a month where different people come in to talk about different rare illnesses or signs of different rare illnesses, or just maybe just like random lessons in school where you kind of talk about different illnesses that you could possibly have, or I don't know. I think just casual things that we just build into everyday learning, so it's not so bizarre and so weird, and trying to normalize being different and having illnesses. And I think I just want to help schools promote accepting that you have an illness, whether it's physical or mental. We to say you feel sick, using that people understand and respect. School, if I had a school where people understood and I was allowed to be sick, and all my friends kind of understood and knew, okay, well, she has a rare disease, maybe, and understanding that that's okay, and I don't have to feel bad about that, and teachers could see that I was sick and say, okay, well, she can't do that, that's fine, we don't need to punish her or with everybody else. And if we just create an environment where it's just okay not to be okay, then I feel like that's what I would do. Let's just make everything okay. So then growing up, it would be less awkward, and you have less feel less reserved to talk about it because you wouldn't have the horrible experiences from school.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what
That's
I would do.
such a good point, because that is kind of where you get, you know, a lot of character building comes from school and growing up and going through those experiences. And like, I still remember stuff that happened at primary school that like traumatized me, and like now it makes me cringe. Like,
Yeah,
so I think
me too.
it's really important that people know that's a really like vital time, because you're kind of like a sponge and you're taking in everything. So
Yeah.
if you feel like your illness is being seen as a negative thing, you're going to grow up thinking that. So I think, yeah, definitely so important. And I think also, just before we move on to the next question, I think for like diagnosis as well, because as you said, the charity came in and it was a bit late for you, but that could have helped, you know, other kids get diagnosed early, like they might have spotted symptoms in them. So I think it is so important that, yeah, there's something that goes in. And, you know, we have like, I think we used to have like bake sales and stuff for maybe like cancer and stuff like that. I think even if, as you said, like once a month or something, they changed it and had it for invisible illnesses or rare disease. Yeah, it doesn't have to be specific, but it could be in general, like we have the rare disease day, it could be a rare disease bake sale. So I think thinking outside the box of it with that is really important. And then it might just, you know, it might save someone's hearing, it might save someone's life if they know that there's a disease out there, you know, that they didn't know existed before. So it's very important. So that leads me on to the next kind of topic about raising awareness. So how do you feel you can best raise awareness for rare disease as a young person, like today, now?
Well, I think that more now than ever with COVID and everyone being stuck inside, I think social media is a great place. I think some people do use social media as escapism, but it's such a easy way to get to so many people, and I feel like Rare do such a good job at that, of creating things that are easy for people to access. And I think just trying to make rare illness and awareness more common, and just not so much of a, oh look, that's different, I've never seen that before, or that's something I should read, where it should just be every day you see someone talking about something they have, which just makes it feel more comfortable to talk about. So I think just small things that can be done every now and again by literally anybody, just sharing their thoughts and opinions and their experiences, could really help raise awareness for everything, really.
Yeah, that's so important. And I mentioned it yesterday, it's kind of like just even in like normal conversation, if you know, not totally random, but if you have the chance to mention it, then don't feel like you don't, like you can do that. And I think again that will help, because I had an example of someone at my mum's primary school, and she's got lots of ear infections, and her symptoms sound just like how I was when I was younger. And of course, like, no one knows about these things. So even just to mention the word and be like, you could go Google this and make sure that it's not that, and then, you know, that might save someone. So I think it is so important that we keep talking and keep sharing our experiences. And yeah, as you said, social media is a great tool, because we can access, you know, around the world. It can give us global awareness that you need when you're trying to tackle this topic. So thank you so much. That was really insightful and really good thoughts. Thank you. So now we've got Nazi, and Georgia's going to talk to now.
So, how has genetics played a part in your rare disease journey?
If you don't mind, can you repeat what you said? I don't know if it's my computer, but it keeps cutting out.
I said, how has genetics played a part in your rare disease journey?
I would have to say genetics has played a big role in my rare disease journey, because I don't know if you guys know how my mom and my dad, at first when they got together, they did not know at all that they had the sickle cell trait. And well, just being young kids, young teenagers, they never knew that what sickle cell was, and they didn't was educated about it by their parents or anything. And also on my dad's side, they didn't even know that they had sickle cell anemia. So my mom knew about it from my grandma, but then when she started to learn about it more and more, she felt like it was a curse or just on her personally. And I would have to say that just learning about it as I growed up and learning about my own disease, I would have to say that I learned a lot about it, and a lot of people has found out a lot of facts that they didn't even know.
Mhm.
Okay. How important do you feel genetic testing is when starting a family?
I would have to say it is extremely important, because then you don't want to bring a kid into the world and they are stricken with the same illness that you are stricken with, like sickle cell anemia, or just like how Katrina, she has lupus, because God forbid, if your soulmate has the trait of your disease, both of those traits can actually make a whole, and that kid can be stricken with it. And I feel like that no kid or child should be able to face any pain or just any symptom of a disease. They should have a normal life and be able to enjoy their life like a normal kid. um, and also, I feel like that the more you educate yourself about it, and even if you go get yourself tested before thinking about having a family, I think you can be able to prepare yourself way better, even if you want your child to have sickle cell anemia or a rare disease. Um, I think that you'll know how to take care of that child way better than your parents took care of you, or you took care of yourself.
Yeah. Should this topic be spoken about in schools when they are teaching about sex education?
I would have to say they should teach about it, because then a lot of people don't know that we either have diseases that we don't know about that isn't awakened yet, especially how the older we get, we may get something, or we probably just finding out about this disease that our parents never told us about, or our parents never knew about. And the more that the students get educated about these different diseases, they'll know, hey, once I get older, I can be able to go get tested, see which one of these diseases I have, or if I don't have a disease. And if my soulmate has this disease, I can be able to educate them also, or just educate everyone around me also, so they can be able to know, hey, if this happens, or if your child has this disease, I'll know how to take care of that child, or just my partner in general.
Yeah. Okay, and is there anything else that you want to mention about genetics?
Genetics. No, that's about it. I just think that it's important to get tested. I think that's what my whole family does in the organization. Like, we try to tell a lot of people about getting tested. That is extremely important. We stress ourselves about this every single day and every time that we're telling people about different rare diseases, because we just don't want to see another child that's in pain or that's about to lose their battle to a rare disease. So the best way to go about it is just educating other people, or just educating your spouse about it.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, I think you had a really great point there, Nazi, when you were talking about having, like, showing people an example of what it would be like to raise a child with sickle cell. I think that's something that people don't really think about doing. So then it could be, their choice. If they want to go ahead, if they know about it, then they know how to best care for that child. I think that's really, really important to mention that. So thank you so much. And I think, yeah. Did you want to talk at all about diet, or like the importance of diet, or no? It's up to you. You can if you want to. It's your time to shine now, so it's totally up to you.
Sure. I would have to say that about the importance of diet. I wouldn't have just put it on sickle cell anemia, because I don't want everyone to think that I'm just looking at sickle cell anemia, because then we talk about different types of rare diseases. I think the diet goes for every single one, because, well, it plays a big role with your disease. Going the healthy pathway, a lot of people says, like, why do you always say healthy pathway? The reason why I say healthy pathway is because that when you're going on a healthy journey, you start to notice a lot of different things within your body, or just being able to focus in school, work, or just getting different tasks done around the house or home. And also, I noticed that when you start to eat more vegetables, more fruits, and just starting to just add more water to your diet, and try to take out a lot of heavily processed foods and foods that has processed ingredients inside of it, you'll notice a big change. And I feel like everyone should go for a healthy heart walk for at least 30 minutes a day. Even if they're not busy, or whenever you have time out of your day, I think that's really important. And just taking the time out to actually care about your health, I think that's really important, to educate your family, your friends, because then the healthier way is the best way. And you'll also add way more years on for you to be able to live. And who wants to pass away early? I know I don't want to pass away early. So I think that's the best way for you to be able to go.
Yeah. No, I think that's so good, and it's so true. Something came to mind there when I was having some tests done, and one day I had to drink like a lot of water before they could do this test, and I felt so good like that day, for the rest of the day, having drunk like, I can't remember how many liters, but it was a lot of water. And I felt really like fresh and hydrated, and then I try and, like, I want to do it again. I want to drink that much water again in the morning, but I can't, but I should. I know I should, but you can. It's true. It's true. Having a healthy lifestyle, again, that ties in with, if you can, it ties in with the mental health, because it's all connected, isn't it? It's all interconnected. So I think it's really important. And obviously the cakes and the treats that you bake look amazing. I wish we could try them. You have to mail some.
And I think when people hear organic or just eating healthy in general, they get extremely scared. They're like, oh no, healthy is oats and all of these. No, you can make it a delicious way, but you can just make sure that you're basically making everything home safe. For example, you guys may have different restaurants in the UK, and you may see a cheeseburger that you really love, or french fries that you're in love with. You can basically take those little ingredients, or anything that you notice that you taste inside of that, you can basically go home and make it yourself with sweet potato fries or ground turkey, but you can do it a healthier way. I feel like that it doesn't really stop you from eating anything that you're having on a daily basis, but you don't have to have it every single day, and you don't have to have it the processed way. So that's about it. Even when you were talking about drinking water, I feel like personally, I cannot drink a lot of water all at once. I know that my mom, she loves drinking a whole gallon of water. I cannot drink a whole gallon of water in one day. It takes me about 2 days just to drink a whole bottle of water. So I try to let a lot of people know not to go water overload, because then you can hurt yourself by drinking way too much water all in one day. anything of too much is like it's way way too much for yourself. But I would have to say that water is good for you, but just don't overdo it.
Yeah, not so much that it's bad. Everything in moderation is something that Pamela said yesterday on our Insta Live. She said everything is good in moderation, and I really like that. I think that that can be applied to most things in life, especially donuts. Cool. That's really nice. Thank you, Nazi and Georgia. So before we go on to our final kind of topic, I just want to mention that we will be taking questions once we've finished our topic. So if you, audience, have any questions, then you can put them in the chat, I think. Sorry, I didn't mention that at the beginning because we were all a bit flustered, but there you go. So the next thing we were going to talk about, kind of as a group, and also Georgia's sort of specialist subject, is role models. And I think Katie Baker had a few questions that she wanted to kind of bring up. So there you go, Katie.
Thank you. I don't know if it's my internet, but sorry if it drops out. I don't really know what's going on, but bear with me.
Okay.
We
will.
Yes, my first question is, why do you feel so passionate about raising awareness of the topic of around role models?
So the reason that it's such a big deal to me is because when I was diagnosed, I was 15, and that, I don't know about the rest of you, but that is like the typical age where you want to be someone else, and you're looking at celebrities and people on Instagram and stuff, and trying to look up to them and dress like them and act like them. And I just couldn't see myself anywhere in the media. There was nobody to look up to. And I think that really had an impact on my mental health, because I just couldn't see myself anywhere. And also I think that, and I still get this now, because I use a wheelchair, and when I go out places and I see other people in a wheelchair, I notice them straight away, and I found myself thinking, why am I so nosy? Why am I staring at the people in wheelchairs? But it's because I don't see myself represented anywhere else. So when I do see it, it's a shock, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think, like a few of us touched on earlier, like 15 and like going through your teenage years with a rare disease or chronic illness or whatever, like that's so tough, isn't it? Like you're not just like changing physically, but like you're developing, and like as Daisy said, even things like homesickness, I don't know, and things like that. It can just that age, and then like on top of like developing things, like being diagnosed with a rare disease, like that's I'm about to say a huge thing. That's such an understatement, but yeah, but I'm sure a lot of people can, like, well, I know a lot of people can look up to you now, Georgia. So you're a role model for other people. The next question is, so do you now have a role model, and if so, who?
So I've thought about this question. I would say not really. I try not to obsess over people too much, if that makes sense, because it's a bit cringy, but we're all different, so I'm not going to be the same as someone else.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I would say there's a man with the same disease that I have, my client, and he's an American, and he's so cool.
Oh. That's the one who wrote the book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
Things I'm sure, just like knowing his name, and you said like he wrote a book, I'm sure like going from probably knowing no one else with your condition and like having to adapt, and then finding someone with the same condition. Like, I'm sure that was such a big thing for you, like with your rare disease and mentally. Like again, it kind of like shows the interlink between all of the topics.
That's definitely been it's been a good thing in my life.
Yeah. So the last question is, what changes in terms of role models would you like to see with for those with rare disease?
I would just say more role models, especially in the media. In particular, films about disabled people that are played by disabled people.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing, because the amount of films that exist that are just using the storyline of disability but are not actually helping any disabled people. Yeah, it's annoying. So yeah, but just more people to look up to and to make it more normal.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. I think thanks, Katie. Thanks, Georgia. I think that's I can comment on two of those questions, so I'll just give a little bit of my point of view. So she's not a role model, but it's someone that I kind of saw, and as you said, Georgia, like about seeing yourself somewhere else, someone you can like relate to. I found this girl on Instagram, or my friend showed me her. I don't know if she showed me her for the reason, but anyway, she's like quite Instagram like famous, and her name's Chessie King. I'm sure she won't mind me saying that because she's mega famous, so probably good for her views anyway. But she did like a tiny post about her. So I followed her before, and then one day I saw that she did this post about her hearing aid, and I had no idea that she wore hearing aid. Like the whole time I followed her, and I just was like, wow, it really took me back that she did, just because I was like, I didn't think other people like my age, it's not like really common. So it was really amazing to see her as like a young woman doing her thing, and then also, oh look, she has the same disability as me. So that was really like, I don't like using the word, but it was inspiring. It was inspiring, and then it actually inspired me to then share my story. And I would never have done it before, but I literally wrote in my notes on my iPhone, I just wrote down what had happened to me, and I'd never done it before. I'd never even I wasn't into patient advocacy. I didn't even think about my mindset was just to ignore it. It was really unhealthy, and I just wanted to ignore my ears and ignore the problem until it became too big that I couldn't ignore it. So I think it was so good to just even write down how I was feeling about it and what happened to me just in note form, and then had the work experience with Rare Rev, and from that note in my phone I showed it to Nicola, and she said, oh, you can turn that into an article. And then that was the first time I actually properly shared my story and really kind of Rare Rev to publish it way back when. And so I think just having her and seeing her just write a paragraph about her own journey with being deaf or having hearing aids really inspired me to go on. So I think it's really important to see people that are, on a platform or not on a platform doing and living with the same thing as you. I think that's super important. And then I was just going to comment on the people being played in films, because I watched The Fundamentals of Caring the other day, and that's a cool film, but all the way through I was thinking he's not got muscular, because he had muscular dystrophy, didn't he? Yeah. And I was thinking, I know that guy, he doesn't have it. And it was annoying me the whole way through. So I think it's such a good point that they should try and find people that wanna, if they can, act and wanna do that, represent it, then they should be first choice. Not, I know it's difficult because you need actors, but there is definitely room there. I don't know if anyone else had anything they wanted to comment on that topic of role models. Katie, yeah.
I'd say, yeah, I think it's following what Georgia said, and I think about the media. I think there's some things that are so harmful, and also like some things are getting better. Like Daisy's saying, there's a girl I follow on Instagram called Sophie Butler, and she's paraplegic. But you know, I think she's like awesome with what she does. She was recently the first disabled woman to be on a Cosmopolitan cover, which I just thought was really cool. She's in a wheelchair. But I think, like Daisy said, I think some things are really harmful. I think like the most common thing was Sia's moving music, which is obviously about an autistic girl and wasn't played with someone who had autism, or films like Me Before You, which was such a harmful story as well, like the actual just story they were telling people with a disability, and then it's not even be like played by a disabled person, or for the author to have, you know, asked anyone about that to begin with. And even like such like popular TV shows like Glee, I don't know, Superstore, that's coming on Netflix, they have a wheelchair user who isn't played. And I think it's that, like I said, I think there's some like really good things out there, and then some which are just more harmful than anything else.
Yeah, I get that. I think you guys might have seen it, but Sex Education on Netflix, that's good, because the boy in that, I think he does have a disability. So I think there are people that are trying to represent it, but it's definitely an area for improvement, I think, if they can, for sure. So does anyone else have any role model related things they wanted to say before we open up for some Q&A?
I'm not sure if this is anything dealing with role models, but I feel like I don't want to say I'm not being biased or anything, or like being on anyone's side, but I feel like that some celebrities should be able to accept the fact that some people have rare diseases, and they should also stand up for that. And also, if they know that one of their fans have rare disease, they should be able to say, hey, this person has a rare disease, or just be able to bring awareness about that, because I noticed that a few celebrities have been extremely rude and just ignored the fact that their fans have rare diseases, and I thought that it was extremely, I would have to say, nasty in my point of view. And that's one thing that I love to do when I don't really see myself as a celebrity, because then I'm not even that big right now.
You are.
Soon. When I get to that point, I love every single one. So I feel like that when you find someone that has that rare disease or just a chronic illness, just be compassionate about it and be nice towards that person. I don't care. You shouldn't be fake at all. And no one should be rude towards that person that has a chronic illness.
That's so important. So important. Yeah, people that have a platform, they should use it for positive way. And definitely, I think you're going to be so good at that because you're already amazing at it now. And I think everyone can agree that you're just so warm and lovely. So I think keep doing what you're doing. You're doing so good.
Thank you so much.
That's okay. Okay, so we've got some questions. So I think I'm going to just read the first one out. So how do your siblings cope with your rare disease? Does it impact them? Thank you. And that's from Rafe. So I don't know if anyone wants to jump on that, if they've got siblings that they can talk about. Yeah, should we go for Katie first and then Nazi? Yeah.
I spoke to my sister on my podcast about this question, really. So my sister's only a year younger than me, and I think during COVID especially, we've got a lot, well, close anyway, but like got a lot closer around my rare disease. She's very, I don't know, quite protective, but then also like stood up for me quite a lot. For example, I went to hospital once, and my a top cardiologist was looking at Wikipedia of my condition, which we didn't think was a reliable source of information. Anyway, Lucy, being Lucy, quite loud, she just walked in and said, "What? Why are you looking on that?" I mean, she didn't mean it in a rude way, but she obviously wanted what was best for me. So I don't know. Like, advice I would give is kind of just like be there for the person and talk about it quite openly, because the chances are like they are happy to answer questions, and especially with a sibling, because there might be a time where you need them to, I don't know, pass on information or be like really glued up on your rare disease. So yeah, communication.
Yeah. Communication's key. That's brilliant. Nazi, what were you going to say about the siblings question?
I would have to say, well, personally, none of us really have problems with our sickle cell anemia, but I would have to, I think it's Shakara. Yes, Shakara, our oldest sister. She's the one that mainly goes back into the hospital back and forth. I think it's every 6 weeks up to Gainesville. So we try to give her that support system that she needs, because then I think family support is extremely important. And just to be able to have different coping mechanisms, such as watching fun TV shows, movies, and even having family, like I said, and just having little jokes, because once you're there for your family or your friends that has a rare disease, I think that it really helps with the healing process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So communication and making like light of stuff where you can and supporting each other. I think that's really lovely. Thanks, guys. So then we've got another question here from Rebecca. What is the most ridiculous question or comment you've been asked, and what advice would you give to others to cope with this sort of unwanted comments? Has anyone got any experiences with this? I think Nazi, you go, Nazi, go.
I'm sorry that I'm talking so much.
No, you're not. You're fine. It's good. Good old chipping.
I have to say that someone asked me before, can you catch sickle cell anemia? Can everyone catch sickle cell anemia? Like, is it like cooties? And it was so irritating. That's like, I think I would have to say that was in the beginning before we started eating healthy. That's why I really never told anyone about our disease, because then I felt like I was invisible to the face of the earth, like I tell a lot of people. And it kind of hurted me just to hear someone saying that, is it like cooties? So it was really no point of me saying what the meaning of sickle cell was, but just looking back at it now, I think it's hilarious personally.
It is. That is funny. Yeah, I think there are some really ridiculous assumptions, and like as we've seen with our myth busting. So Katie, were you gonna comment, or did you just? Sorry, I thought you raised your hand. No, must have. Katie,
I was going to say something, but I couldn't think about which Katie.
Sorry, yeah, Katie C. Yeah, go ahead.
I've had actually the same as mine. I was like, is it contagious? And I was like, no. I think you get so many people like coming up to you like, are you gonna die? You're just gonna ask that. I have a friend of mine, actually, a really good family friend who has a very rare disorder which causes like non-cancerous tumors, and he always gets people, are you gonna die? And he just goes, well, yeah, I am. And they're like, yeah, well, all I don't really know it properly. But I think like one of the things I've had before when I first got diagnosed was like, oh yeah, like my boyfriend's sister's cousin has that disorder, and I was looking at them thinking that like they're this other like 12, 13-year-old kid. I'm thinking, oh okay, do they? I was like, yeah. I'm not too sure about that, but I think people do just say some really odd stuff, and I think with coping with it, I think it's just being like they're clearly not very well educated and understood, and either like trying to help them understand or just sort of trying to brief it off and just being like it's good. They just don't really get it.
Yeah, I think that's great, knowing that sometimes it's not their fault, like obviously unless they're being intentionally mean, but sometimes it's just a lack of education around the subject. And I think lots of people jump to conclusions with that kind of thing. I had someone say, like, doesn't it get like sad, like working in like rare disease, isn't it really sad? And I was like, no, like it's not sad. It's, I don't know what they like imagine it to be like, but like I've had more fun than I've had with other people. Like, don't want to badmouth my friends, but I've had like a lot of fun with you guys. So it's not a sad thing. It never is to me. Obviously there's sad parts of it and there's difficult times, but I think yeah, there's a lot of assumptions that need to kind of be unassumed. I think that's right. So I hope that answered that question. Another one, I think we've kind of touched on it, but it was going back to the genetics. So should there be basic genetic education built into sex education at school? And yeah, I think Nazi, you kind of commented on that earlier. So was there anything else?
I would just say yes. There should be basic education with genetics, because then it'll help that person way more, especially if they planning on having a family in the future, or whenever they're planning on having a family or a child, just so they can be able to know what they're going ahead, or what, just so they can be able to prepare themselves for the future. Yeah.
I think that would be really cool if we could get stuff like that into the school curriculum. That would be great. So another question is, how have you found home learning? Has this been beneficial for you and management of your conditions? So is anyone? Yeah, Katrina?
Well, for me, I was homeschooled. I think during secondary school, it was a mixture between school and then homeschool. Then towards my GCSEs, I was homeschooled. So I found it helpful, but it was still quite hard keeping up and catching up with everyone else, because I was already behind at that point. So it was the work I had to do then and the work I have to do now, and so it was a bit difficult. But I think in like these times, although I'm not in education right now, my brother is, I think it's quite difficult for kids now to deal with that. And I actually like it, because it gives people the perspective that I had when you're trying to learn from home. You don't always have the same accessibility as everyone else. So I think it's quite difficult either side, whether it's normal times and you can go to school but you're at home, or now you have to be at home trying to learn everything by yourself, really.
Yeah, I think it can probably be kind of hard not having someone like immediately there that you can ask questions to. And I think, I mean, I don't know, for like everyone else working from home or doing uni from home, do you think it's helped with like managing your conditions, or do you think it's kind of been Katie?
So I'm studying at the moment, and I think it's a mix. Like, I think home learning, personally for me, has been okay. I mean, it's hard, I feel, but I do think it's okay. But then I think going back to normality in some ways, like going back to uni or going back to school, I think for us or the people with rare disease, it makes it more overwhelming and anxiety provoking, because you've been at home for so long, which is for me easy, and I'm sure a lot of other people are easier. And although a lot of people are like so excited to get back to normal, I think for us it can be a bit daunting, can't it? Because I've got to like get used to it all again. So yeah, I think there are pros and cons, I feel.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think it can definitely be a good thing sometimes, but then I think it's also kind of keeping you back a bit, because it's making the next thing when we're allowed out again a bit scary, isn't it? So it's a bit pros and cons, as you said. So the next question from my cat has decided to join us. Just gonna put him down. He always does this. Max, go away. So the next question's from Eden, and she said, our daughter just turned 12 last Friday and was unexpectedly lost access to her health records app today. Do you think you were equipped at 12 to manage your own health records, or did your parents still manage them? Nazi, do you want to go first? Or okay, Katie.
Yeah, so I think personally, I think at 12, I would have found that really overwhelming. Like, I think there's a difference between having like involvement with like your health and then like managing it. And I think just at 12, if you are having like complete management over your health records in a health records app, I think that would have been really overwhelming for me personally. I think that's a lot of work to take on as a young age. I mean, I was quite mature at the age of 12 because of my condition and having to go up a bit quicker than the usual person. But no, I definitely think I would have found that quite overwhelming. But I think it's important to have an input and like a say in your health, but not necessarily like managing that type of thing yourself.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think, yeah, having a say but not being solely your responsibility is good. Nazi, what was your thoughts on this one?
I would have to say that, like Katie said, it does sound overwhelming, but then I think the perfect ideal plan for every parent that has a child with a chronic illness is to teach your kids how to access those records and teach them step by step. And while you're going through it, you can be able to show them what you're going over, and little notes that the doctor put down, they can be able to learn as you're learning at the same time, just so that both of you guys are educated on what's going on with your child, and that way your child isn't lost while you're knowing everything about their disease. Because then I don't think it sounds scary at the same time, because then I know that the parents probably were extremely mad or something, but then I don't think it's a really big problem because it's something that you can be able to go back and get. But then just for future reference, you can be able to go over it with your daughters.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's really good to learn along the way. So again, yeah, not being like it's completely yours, but being taught along the way, and then that will help you when you're older. You'll be able to do it for yourself if you want to in your appointments, and knowing all about your records. And like, I've still got the same like wallet with all my stuff in from when I was younger. So I think, yeah, it's good to understand it. So I hope that answered that question, Eden. Thank you. And then the final question, do you think you would have benefited from being seen in the children's setting for longer? Do you think transition happens too early? I guess, yeah, Katie, do you want to take that one? That's kind of your... Yeah.
I think this is something that I am so passionate about, but it's such a difficult subject. Because I find it really complicated, because in the UK at least, you're legally not an adult till 18. But in a lot of NHS catchment areas, you transition to adults at 16. I can never quite get my head around that. Personally, I think staying in a pediatric setting till 18 can be beneficial for a lot of people. But then there's the flip side, where also there might be some 16-year-olds who do feel ready to go to adults and don't necessarily want to be surrounded by like younger children anymore, would rather be in that setting. So I think personally, I definitely would have benefited from staying in children's a little bit longer. And I think in some scenarios, it does happen early. I do think that it probably should be more around the age of 18. Also for the fact that if you're on an adult ward, you suddenly don't get educational input, whilst you are still in an education till you're 18, at least in the UK, which I never quite understand either. I think it's one of those things that I personally have talked about with a lot of people, the transition nurse at my hospital and stuff, and he was like, that's such like a difficult question that a lot of people say, yeah, it should be 18, but then some people go, yes, but in some areas it can be difficult, because obviously then you can have like pregnancies on wards and this, that, the other, and then that can be difficult to have with children around. And I think it's a really difficult question, but personally, yes, and I think some people definitely would. And I always think like the ideal answer for that is to have an adolescent type of ward or output, which I think the main place that has that in the UK is UCLH, who I am under now, and what they do is fantastic, because they have a ward for 13 to 18-year-olds, and then they have 19 to 25, and you're never on a proper adult ward till you're 25 years old, which I think is really good. But I think personally, yes, I would have benefited. And I think with some people it does happen too early, but it's like so dependent on like the person and scenario and everything. So
yeah, I think it comes down to, I guess, your own personal experience, but that's really valuable. Thank you. I think it would be so cool if we could, have like a middle ward, because I mean, we are like middle, we're not like, not we, but you can be a child, then you're a teenager, young adult, then you're an adult. So it isn't like you're a child, then you're an adult. It's not like that in any other aspect of life. So why should it be like that in hospitals and in something that's so like important?
I think it's even like having like even like a bay on the ward, which is just for that age group. It's little things like that that I think can really help sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so that's the end of the questions. So thank you so much for everyone that submitted questions, and thank you all so much for your amazing insights, and just I'm very proud of all of you for coming forward and sharing and caring for each other, and I think you're all amazing individuals and you're going to do brilliant things. So thank you, Georgia, for co-hosting this panel. And yeah, if anyone has anything else to add, you can say it now. We all good? Yeah. Okay, thanks guys. Thank you so much. So I think Jeff, you can take back now. Take back the screen.
No problem at all. Thank you, young ladies, for everything you've contributed. I want to thank, Rare Revolution magazine with Rebecca and Nicola, all of them that are there and making this possible and pulling us together for this event. Great discussion about it and what your experiences are. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
For those that are online, please go out and enjoy the 24 Hours Rare event. For the rest of the day, we are having networking sessions. And tomorrow we will be back on at 9 a.m. Eastern time. We do have an open networking session at 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight for those that are abroad. But the event space is open 24 hours a day. So, ladies, thank you. And we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.